just said, is it on one? I was talking about the fan that we've got. And they sound like I'm saying, are you on one?
Yeah, they found us somehow. Using
They found me. I don't know how.
But they
found me. Welcome everyone to Doctor Who Review. I'm Chris.
I'm not Chris.
And we are up to our third full portion, not counting the Christmas special, of Series 4. Or as the French say, Le Four. Doctor Who, modern series. This is a vidcast. Don't be confused, you can't see us. This is how it's been since the beginning. And by the beginning, I mean the 1963 first season. There's a whole playlist. Go and watch them if you wish. But right now, we're up to... This is interesting because it's 3 episodes. Technically 2 stories. Stephen Moffat written Silence in the Library and the Forest of the Dead. And the Russell T Davies written Midnight. One of which is my favourite 10th Doctor story. And the other one of which... Can you guess
which one? Comment below.
Well,
but you'll find out.
The other one of which, not Chris, had forgotten everything about, apparently. Which was wonderful, because it was almost like watching you watch it for the first time. As such, would you like to tell everyone the plot of Silence in the Library and Forest of the Dead?
So the Doctor and Donna end up in this giant library, which is a planet made up of this... it's a library. It's a library planet. And there's nobody there. And the Doctor and Donna are like, what the heck? And they head up to the information desk, and a robot...
an information node.
It was a... I don't like the word node.
Why?
Do you? I don't like it.
Why do you like the word node?
I don't know. It just... I don't know.
Denode.
Stop it. And it turns on and it has a human face. So it's like this white... It almost looks like a white pebble, doesn't it? Giant pebble with a human face just chatting away. And it says there's a message for people that arrive there. And it essentially tells them they need to run. Yeah,
run. For God's sake, run. Yeah.
And obviously the Doctor and Donna don't do that.
What happens? Who did they see first?
They see...
The little girl.
No, they don't see the little girl.
No, when they leg it. They watch the shadows, which is what they were told to do by the node. Watch the shadows. When the lights start turning out, they charge into a room, and there's a little girl in there.
There's not a little girl.
Who fizzes out and turns into a security camera.
No, she is the security camera.
Yeah, because she's a security camera.
But they don't see a girl, they just see the
No, they see a little girl. You obviously were looking away at that moment then, because you see from their POV, you see Cal, she screams, and then turns into a wooden ball and drops to the floor.
Oh. So they find this little girl, which we keep cutting back to, and she's having like a therapy session with a doctor.
Dr. Moon,
and she's wondering why there are people in her library. And then the Doctor and Donna, they end up finding a crew of essentially archaeologists, don't they?
Well, that's the thing. They were given a note to come along, and it was a really informal one because it ended with a kiss. Which Donna's like, that's weird. And the Doctor's like, oh, people just do that, don't they? And then when they arrive, this team, the team is sort of explorers and security reconnaissance people made up of Proper Dave, Other Dave, Anita, Miss Evangelista, Strackman Lux, the owner of the library, or at least the current beneficiary of like the estate of the library. And what are you doing? What are you gesturing?
My scissors.
Just say, could you pass us my scissors, please?
Sorry, I wanted to interrupt you.
You're just staring at me over a leg going, dip, 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 dip. I'm like, what are you doing?
I was trying to be so... I was trying to use code.
And Professor Riversong, who is the archaeologist who sent the Doctor the note.
Yeah.
So what follows is the discovery of why 4,022 people seemingly disappeared, and yet the nodes claim that they are saved. They were saved despite the fact no one left the planet, and what is lurking in the shadows suggests that perhaps something out there was devouring people.
Yeah.
Because what's in the shadows?
The darkness.
No, what's living in the shadows? Or what some of the shadows made up of?
It's made up of a species called the Vashta Nerada. And they are essentially like little microbes, aren't they? That feed on...
They're tiny carnivores. Like microscopic carnivores.
Yeah, they're like teeny tiny, itsy bitsy, teeny weeny piranhas.
Piranhas of the air.
Of the air.
Piranhas of the air.
Why, David?
I know! I've seen piranhas of the air for years.
I've seen Vashta Nerada for years. Yeah, and if you stand in the shadows, they will essentially latch onto you and just gobble you up, really. As we find with Miss Evangelista.
Miss Evangelista.
She kind of wanders off a little bit from the group, and because she thinks there's somebody there. And the rest of the group hear a scream. They run over, and there's just this skeleton in this suit, and they're like, can't be her, because we just heard her scream.
Mm-hmm.
No way could she be a dry skeleton with nothing on her.
Like literally no meat on the bones, nothing. Stripped clean.
And yet they can hear her.
Mm-hmm.
And River explains to everybody that the thing that, like, the communicators...
Little relay in the suits, yeah.
Like, keep your consciousness...
Or like a sort of copy
of your consciousness for a few more minutes. So she doesn't know where she is. She doesn't know that she's died. So they're just trying to be, nice and comforting. And she's asking for the nice lady, who was Donna, because Donna was taking the time out to talk to her.
Yeah, because her boss looks and the other crew treat her like she was an idiot.
Yeah.
So you get this pretty horrible moment of she's the first victim sort of in story, because now we're in a horror creature feature territory. Albeit a very wooden, pretty, ornate looking one, but we're in one.
Yeah.
We're in Jaws, we're in Anaconda, we're in there is a monster and it's going to get us all eventually. So we need to, survive as long as we can. Yeah. But Evangelista's gone, Donna sort of talk her consciousness into submission, and it sets up the trope that as the consciousness is leaving, it starts to repeat itself. Yeah. There's like the thought patterns weakening, which becomes a wonderful tell later in the story of when someone... Well, as a narrative device. As a narrative device, it becomes a wonderful tell as to who has passed away but is being piloted by the Vashta Nerada. Because, along the way we lose... the first sort of creepy loss is Proper Dave, played by Harry Ray Bloody Purchase Peacock, which I can't unsee now. He does a great job with this, but I can't. As a man who has devoured Toast of London in its entirety so many times at this point, it just makes me smile that the scary monster in this is Ray Purchase. He gets into his suit, and then he's devoured, but they're walking around using his body and his suit as sort of like a vehicle, so they can travel. Mm-hmm. And it's repeating his last words over and over again, which is disturbing. So the plot of the Vashta Nerada and the library essentially is that we learn that the planet has a computer inside it, and there's an antivirus software being beamed down through a piece of hardware above, which is the moon. Because the whole thing's artificial. Yeah, it's the repository of. And I love the idea of the library. It's the repository of all written knowledge. Every book ever in existence up to that point is there, either as a brand new first edition hard copy, first of this century's edition hard copy, or backed up on the database at the centre of the planet to be recalled and read whenever needed. Yeah. And it's not the size of a planet, but it's a planetoid and was obviously busy enough before, but it must be quite small because the full occupancy was 4,022 people. Mm-hmm. At the time of everything going haywire. So you learn that Lux's auntie was dying when she was younger,
great aunt.
Well, no, because it's his grandparents.
No, it was his great grandfather.
I thought it was his granddad's oldest daughter, so it'd be his aunt, wouldn't it?
I thought it was his great grandfather's.
This is by the by, basically a relative of his that he never met.
No, we need to get the family tree right. So
Okay.
who was the No, joking.
I'm looking it up then. Come on, here we go.
Oh, Mr. Pedantic.
Says you're the one chipping in. So the next episode summary, because of course it is. Basically, Cal was dying, and the best existence that they could give her, because she was dying from a young age, was to back up her memory, like we learn about the thought backups here, into the system.
And she kind of lives in
It's his aunt. It's his aunt. It's his grandfather's oldest.
Oh, right, okay, sorry.
Charlotte Abigail Lux, Cal.
My bad.
So, yay! What do I win? An invitation to sleep on the couch tonight. So, yeah. So she was dying at a young age. Something that she couldn't be saved from. So essentially, they uploaded her thought pattern into the planet. So she doesn't necessarily know who she is, or at least she's aware of it somewhere in her mind, but it's not important. She gets to be a little girl and live out her life in any world she deems fit. But obviously, she's under some distress because what she's processing at the minute, as we see, is therapy sessions with Dr. Moon.
Mm-hmm.
Well, she seems content, but it's like she has all of fiction to live in. Why would it just be sort of like in a domestic setting in contemporary Earth? It's like, well, it's because she's panicking. She doesn't realise it. Because what Cal did, when she realised that the Vashta Nerada were loose on the library, was save everyone's consciousness into her computer. Problem is, the energy to project them out or even send a message, really, to get everything out there, she'd need more memory, which she doesn't have. There's no free space left.
Yeah.
And Dr. Moon, the virus check, is working overtime to make sure that Cal is stable and okay. Even if it means sort of like messing with Cal's memory to a point where she's just calm and is comfortable.
So taking these, I guess, like what he'd consider a virus, and then she forgot.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's and also Dr. Moon is having to help placate the 4,022 people. Well, we presume there's 4,022 in there. I think it says that, but I'm like, no, I'm sorry. Someone must have been eaten before it all went down. Someone must have been eaten, surely.
Well, I was... Oh, no, yeah, I guess you're right.
So that's what's going on with that, and that's why Lux is invested in it all, not because it's like, it's my business, I've got to deliver it, and he's played up as pompous as sin by the absolutely wonderful Steve Pemberton.
I thought you were looking up his name then. I was like, how?
No, I'm pulling up the cast in general so I can refer to everyone. But because obviously, and also this is our second on-camera League of Gentlemen cast member to make it into modern Doctor Who. 2 down, 1 to go. Although we'll see one of them again like twice before the end of the modern run so far as well. Because he plays 3 parts. He plays 4, but one of them's a voice. Anyway, point is, Steve's in this. Yay. Did Tubbs do right? You did it beautifully, Tubbs. And yeah, so Lux is actually invested because it's more about making sure that his aunt is safe, and is going to be okay. So that's a nice bait and switch. I mean, he's still a prick. He's still nasty to everybody, especially to poor Miss Evangelista. Played by Tallulah Riley, who really doesn't deserve the shite she gets.
What do you mean?
What Miss Evangelista has to go through.
Oh, I thought you meant the actress. I was like, what happened?
No. Jessica Williams is Anita, who's great and provides a wonderful bit of peril across the second episode as she's just waiting for her clock to run out because she knows she's screwed. Yeah, the way she plays that is brilliant.
That's what's really heartbreaking about it. That the Doctor, she gets 2 shadows, which is how you know, like Christopher said, that how you know that you've been infected. And
they do, or targeted.
Yeah.
And they don't know for sure how to get rid of them, so they're just trying anything they can. And so he blacks out her visor.
He tints her visor so she can still see just about.
Yeah, and it's to try and confuse the Vashta Nerada so that they would sort of take a look, maybe externally, and go, oh, we're already in there. or something. Like he's just trying anything, because that's the thing. The Vashta Nerada are intelligent, but they're sort of like a hive intelligence. They're very basic, like we just eat and that's all we do.
Yeah.
But they have a hunting pattern. They're sort of like a shark, but if the sharks got together every now and again and like swapped stories, basically.
Right.
And that's what's tragic, isn't it? Is that you don't know at what point she was killed.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't really get into the proper full-on repeating thing till later.
No.
And that's the whole point. It's like the Vashta... He encouraged them to talk through Proper Dave's suit. Yeah?
Yeah.
And then when O.T. Let's get his surname right. O.T. Fagbinley, as Other Dave, when he gets taken over, it's sort of like, oh no, and it's the two Daves. Have been devoured and are now being used basically as like vehicles for the Vashta Nerada to move around more freely. Yeah. When he gets taken, it's really horrible. But like the doctors want to encourage them to talk through the suit.
Yeah.
So they take on his note, and when they kill Anita, we don't know when they killed Anita because Anita has been talking to them all the whole time.
Yeah.
And that's really horrible. But I do. This is less effective in hindsight of Stephen Moffat's era showrunner, because this happens way too much going forward. But it's still really effective here in this moment where the Doctor basically gets the Vashta Nerada to they don't run away. They like take him seriously as a threat and give him 1 day to get everything fixed that he wants to do.
Yeah, well,
by saying to them like, I'm the Doctor and you're in the biggest library in the universe, look me up. And they freak out. And I also love that the Vashta Nerada aren't here on some dastardly plan. They're everywhere. Like, they exist on every planet. And Donna's like, what? Even Earth? And he's like, yeah. Sometimes you see them, the specks in moonbeams or sunbeams. And it's like, okay. And it's like, so they do eat things here, but it's mostly just like roadkill, I think is how words is. It's just like roadkill, basically, gets eaten. Because they don't want to devour everything. They just want to eat and live. Although he says, like, the occasional person might go missing. But it's just that whole thing of, someone who's obviously got lost in the woods or whatever, and then people just presume that they went missing for X, Y, and Z. And it's, nope, they were eaten by the Vashta Nerada. And the reason there's so many of them here is because they hatched here.
Yeah.
They didn't somehow swarm here or were brought here as like an espionage thing. All the first editions, all the new editions.
All the wood.
Yeah, all the wood of the bookshelves or whatever. Like, so much of the planet is made up of resources from one forest where a load of them were living and breeding. And it's like, oh. So essentially the moral of it is like, yeah, it belongs to them.
Yeah. Like,
this planet belongs to them as long as... So after the events of this story, I imagine the way it'll be if, Luke sticks to his word is the computer will be left on and all that stuff can carry on. So that Cal, played by Eve Newton, and Dr. Moon, played by the wonderful Colin Salmon, can carry on doing their thing with the database that is there, because obviously there's not as much storage in it by the end of the story.
Mm-hmm.
And the planet basically is just going to be left to the Vashta Nerada. So they will either naturally die out or whatever. Mm-hmm. Like, time will do its thing.
Or stay there and not go to another planet.
Yeah, I mean, hell, maybe Lux will start sending down freaking meat packages or something, do you know what I mean? It's like, there they go. So
just a goat in a cage.
So they can live. Yeah, let's start Jurassic Park. Just like, lower one in.
But the Doctor kind of wants to protect Donna and asks her to do something, doesn't he, in the TARDIS? What does he ask her to do something in the TARDIS? Look, regardless, he sends her back into the TARDIS.
Does he?
Yeah.
Yes, with the transmat. He sends her there because at this point their plan is to all transmat to the TARDIS, but he sends her first.
Yeah.
Because if she goes there and someone goes to hell, then Emergency Protocol 1 will kick in, which we saw in Series 1.
Yeah.
Which is it'll send her home. So there is that. Let me check.
But as she's being transported into the TARDIS, she kind of makes it.
And then vanishes.
But she lets out this blood-curdling scream, which is quite horrific. Excuse me, because the library, Cal, has technically saved her.
Yeah, because at the time we don't know what it's about, because what's wonderful throughout the two-parter is that it's left very obscure until the end, very ambiguous as to what the little girl is and why everything happening in the story appears to be a fiction to her.
Mm-hmm.
And then the lines are blurred when Donna vanishes, and in the next episode we see her in that world interacting with Dr. Moon, and she seems like she's always been there.
Yeah.
Of course, we find out she's been saved because we see her on a node, which earlier on the Doctor described as basically like dedicating a park bench.
Yeah.
So that's the implication that everybody died. And we find out by the end of it that no, they're saved in the system. Like it's fine. It's totally okay. So let's talk about because there's two key things I want to talk about, which are the most important thing about this story. Pardon me, a little toot. But let's talk instead. That'll be on camera. Let's talk instead first. One last thing about the Vashta Nerada as a design, as a concept.
Yeah.
Moffat carrying on with his really creepy, I'm going to turn something that you see all the time or have encountered all the time into something really scary.
Yeah.
Like he's covering fear of the dark, fear of shadows, fear of shapes. Like he's covering. Oh, sorry.
Oh, God.
Just say it. It's fine.
Can you feel the fan?
Yeah, it's fine.
Right, fine.
He's turning, in this case, fear of the dark.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
You know, what's under your bed? It might not be a clockwork man. It might be a pool of piranhas of the air. It's creepy, and he does a great job with it. And I love the visual choice of them stripping things down to the bone, and the fact that then when the Vashta Nerada use like the Daves and Anita as a way to get around, there's still a skeleton in the suit.
Yeah,
and it's obviously a mask as part of the helmet in every shot after the establishing shot.
Yeah,
but there is something very cool about that first moment when you see a prop skull just loll forwards and hit the window of the visor. It's proper creepy. It's like a magic 8-ball from hell, isn't it? It's like shake it, shake it, shake it, shake it, stop, skull. Ah, good lord.
Do you tell me my fortune?
Hey, we turn out the lights. I don't like the sight of two grown men kissing, Toast. I don't see what it's got to do with you. Ray, you bloody purchase. Vashta Nerada
couldn't get through it.
The Vashta Nerada are a great villain because they're not malicious. They're scary and they're intimidating, and they are a little calculating. They can at least plan, but ultimately they're there to eat. That's what they do, and food's arrived.
Yeah. So
it's after food. So it's like fair enough, but it's civilized enough that. After the Doctor sort of threatens them, it goes like, okay, you have 1 day. Get what you need to get done. You have 1 day. They did return. They've never returned in the show, as of this recording, but they did return in a video game. The last of the first series of the adventure games, they came back. Can't remember what it was called now.
I mean, they are a great concept.
Oh, they're a really great concept. Proper creepy.
That would have absolutely shit me up as a child. I'd have been terrified to go anywhere.
Yeah. Well, apparently they've been in a couple of Big Finish stories. Not sure how that works.
Colour me not shocked.
That's it. Shadows of the Vashta Nerada was the adventure game story, featuring them as leading villain when a temporal rift draws a swarm of Vashta Nerada to an underwater base that's being visited by the 11th Doctor and Amy Pond. Yeah, because in that there's a bunch of like diving suits with skeletons in, so they get to kind of
creepy.
They get to kind of do the same thing without doing it exactly the same.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the two key things about this.
Mm-hmm.
One was the thing you forgot about completely because it's probably been about a decade since you last watched this.
Yeah, it was one of those that I've got to admit. It is one of my favourite stories, oh crap, I'm so sorry. I am a walking disaster.
Oh, this case a sitting disaster.
I'm a lying disaster. Yeah,
this was one you regarded as a fave.
Yeah, so I thought I knew it. But we were watching it, I was like, I don't remember any of this. I'm loving it, but I don't remember any of it.
And it's probably because you haven't watched it in 10 years.
Wow.
Or more.
Crazy.
So, the plot that really seemed to get you, and it was fun because it was like watching you watch it for the first time. It was like we were back in a classic serial again. Was Donna's plot and the stuff with Cal in particular. Like her flicking through the channels and talking to them using the remote and it affecting the world around them. But like especially the whole Donna plot in episode 2, which is Catherine Tate and an actor called Jason Pitt playing Lee, doing a really good job. Where Donna is suddenly just someone who's at Dr. Moon's like psychiatric hospital. She meets someone else who lives there. It's sort of implied because he has like a room in the and it's like a really lovely place. It's like a recovery centre almost. Yeah. And he's got a room there, and he likes fishing, and they go out on a bit of a date. With her overdressing for going fishing, and it's just being very Donna. Yeah, he's got a stammer, and Donna keeps thinking it as like drop dead gorgeous and doesn't say a word. Like, did I create you? Like, who's looking down on me and letting me have this? This is amazing. And she's not nasty with him. She's really sweet and stuff. Like, it's a really lovely little bit of piss taking between them both. Yeah. And considering we only see it in basically a TV montage, it's very sweet. Yeah. But you also have the air of what's going on? Yeah. What is going on here? This isn't real. Yeah, because we know Dr. Moon's not real. And every time Donna's like, hang on, we just said we're going to go for a walk, and now we're already here doing a walk, like seconds later. And he's like, yep, and then you forgot. And you're like, what's happening?
When you say we see it in like a montage, that's how it plays out. Yeah. It is like she is living a montage. Yeah. And people around her point it out, like her kids point it out, because it flashes forward 8 years. Yeah. And she and Liam married, have a home, and have 2 young kids. Yeah. They have twins.
Twins. And Dr. Moon, like, pops by every now and again for a visit, just to make sure everything's okay, and send his love and everything. And again, Colin Salmon, considering we, the viewer, at this point, are meant to find him quite sinister.
So talk about
find him quite sinister. He projects such a lovely amount of warmth in these sequences, which just adds to the creep factor almost, because you're like, no, hang on, we shouldn't be getting settled. Which is when, of course, she gets messaged by the mysterious woman in black, who turns out to be Miss Evangelista.
It's very Woman in Black. Sorry, hold on.
Or at the very least, what remained of her consciousness, because she too, like Donna, was saved. Problem is, there wasn't much of her left when it happened. She was let go, because obviously she isn't being piloted by the Vashta Nerada, so it's not like she's dangling around, like, waiting to be saved somewhere. So it's the whole thing of like her thought patterns were saved into the thing, and it all corrupted. So, or possibly tried to compensate for her, because like she was always very beautiful and sort of got by on that, but was aware that she was a bit dim, and she wasn't like beautiful and getting everything she ever wanted. She was being given those opportunities because she was gorgeous, but then people were getting really annoyed that she couldn't do stuff. So it's almost like when she was transferred, either something went wrong or it was compensated, because her physical form inside, or corporeal form inside the simulation, went wrong. So she's got sort of what can only be described as like screwed up Snapchat filter face. Yeah. But her intelligence was like...
Reminded me a bit of that creepy woman in the painting in It.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
Like her face was all wonky and...
Yeah.
Sorry, that was my interpretation of it.
No, this is a good call.
Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
And then she... thank you for listening to my show. And then... yeah, but like her intelligence, it seemed like a decimal point was moved. Yeah. Because like she's the only one in there who is properly perceptive of what's happening. And when she points out to Donna, who, convincingly portrayed by Catherine Tate, is like, leave me and my children alone. She's like, they're not your kids. Like, they're all the same kids. Look at them, and all the kids at the playground are just duplicates of the same boy and girl. Yeah. And that's so... It's just
you
so
spotted
creepy.
That, didn't you, before?
Like, yeah, I mean, I knew it was coming, but like, there's an early tell shot. Like, when she... Like, in the same shot when Miss Evangelista says, look at the children, Donna doesn't, because she changes the subject and they keep talking, and then later in that same scene is when she says, look at the children, like she emphasises. But the first time she says it, just before she does, you see several kids in the foreground in soft focus, and they're all clearly wearing the same outfits. And it's like, that is so creepy, that is so weird. So yeah, it's all a simulation. And as the kids vanish while Donna panics and the system starts to go haywire, she's holding on to Lee for dear life and just trying to retain everything as Lee himself and starts to sort of fade away backwards into the light, and Donna's separated because she eventually comes back and joins the story. And then you get that lovely little horrible punch at the end where she's sort of talking about the husband she had, and it's like, you know, come on, like, obviously too good to be true.
Yeah.
Like, it's mad. And then they leave, that she and the doctor, sort of to wrap up the story, and we see Lee, or whatever his real name is, on the teleport pad with all the people who've been saved, who are being sent home at the end of the story, try to call out a name, but his stammer won't let him, and then he vanishes, and you're like, no!
That's not fair.
Because as far as they know, they were absolutely perfect for each other. It wasn't necessarily that they were just put together as part of the sim. Like, they met each other in there. You know what I mean? It's like, oh my god! Donna, it's the one! And he's gone.
So sad.
That whole sequence, the way it's played out, and again, Catherine Tate primarily, just phenomenal in that part.
Yeah, really good.
Let's talk about the main reason this is a significant story in the history of, well, in just the run of this series and in the history of the show.
Yeah. Professor
Riversong, played by Alex Kingston. When I first saw this go out, I thought this was the coolest idea for a Doctor Who story ever.
Yeah.
And I still think it's a really cool idea.
It is.
It's tweaked a little by knowing what comes next,
yeah.
But like, I still get that sense of, oh my god, we're meeting someone out of sequence. Like, she summoned the Doctor and she's amazed at how young he looks. And she's super, super confused about why he's pretending not to recognise her.
Yeah.
And then you get that realisation of, oh, she's like a future companion. And then as the story goes on, it's more like, oh, no, she's a future more than that. Wait, what? As a debrief for a performer, Alex Kingston understood the assignment.
Yeah.
She's playing someone who is heartbroken to look at the love of her life and then look at her and genuinely in their eyes have no idea who she is.
Yeah.
Like, it is so, once you get your head around that idea, if you're watching this again anytime soon, folks, just watch her face in every scene for the rest of the story. Watch her expression. Even when she's not talking, just watch how she's looking at David. It's so good.
See, I remembered that, you know, obviously this happened in the episode, but I didn't realise it was such a big plot point.
Mm.
The way I remembered it was that she told him at the end that, you know, they know each other from the future.
No, from the tippity.
So as I was watching,
she's the one who put the kiss on the message.
Have I seen this? Have I actually seen these episodes? But
I mean, it's such a great idea. Like, she's investigating this thing, and she knows he could help, so she sends a message to the psychic paper. Hence the informality and the fact that it's got a big kiss on it and everything.
Yeah.
But and she makes thingy of like, oh, this has happened loads of times. Like, if I call him, he comes to help. But unfortunately, the one that's arrived isn't the one she knows.
Yeah. And
specifically isn't the one that knows her.
It arrived too early.
Yeah. And it's just this whole thing, and I love the way she describes the Doctor she knows, and about, like, you know, sort of this look in his eyes, and the last time she saw him, he got his hair cut and wore a new suit. And they could, like, he could, like, click his fingers, and the TARDIS doors would open, and the next stop everywhere, and all this. And you're like, yeah, the way she's talking about him, this is definitely someone who knows him and has lived with him.
Yeah.
So the fact he doesn't know her is horrible. But I love the fact that there's still a bit of banter there. He sort of organically leans into it without realising sometimes, and then kind of catches himself.
Yeah.
Because even though he doesn't know her, she's talking to him like someone who knows him, so he sort of settles into that comfortable zone. Tennant and Kingston do some great work in this to make that pay off. But it's the bit where, of course, all these little things come out. She's got a diary, so she can help keep track of where they are. And she refuses to let him look at it because that's the rules. Like, no peeking. Like, that is the absolute rules. He's like, who came up with that rule? She's like, you did.
Ah.
And it's completely true. It's like, if it's got details of his personal future, he shouldn't be looking in it.
No, exactly.
And he absolutely would say that himself. She has his screwdriver. Like, it's quite clearly his screwdriver, like, amended and tweaked with extra settings.
Yeah.
And he's like, I wouldn't just give someone my screwdriver. Like, what is going on?
So he automatically thinks like, oh, she's like attacked me or something.
Yeah, because she says like, I'm not. Yeah, I didn't pry it from your cold dead hands. If that's what you're wondering. And then she gives him the ultimate reason to trust her. She's like, I'm really sorry. Like, you're not leaving me a choice here. I'm so sorry. And she leans into his ear and whispers something, and the look on his face is just like, wait, hang on. And he says, like, there's only, like, I'd never tell anyone that. There's only one reason I ever would. And he doesn't spell it out until the end, when she's going to sacrifice herself. She's going to, like, use her thought pattern to give Cal the extra space to make the final move to, download everybody back into human form and send them off planet. He says, like, you know my real name. Like, there's only one reason I would ever tell anyone that. And it's so good.
It's him finally realising.
Yeah, it's like, she could only be one thing to me in the future if I told her my name. If I've given her my name, there's only one reason that would happen. And it's just the weight of it is so, like... Because, again, they never outright say it. Like, there's a throwaway line where I think Lux sort of says, you're arguing like an old married couple. And you get that moment, and then just little nods, but they never say it. But they suggest something. And then when you have that, you're like, oh, God, they're together, aren't they? Like, this isn't just a companion. They are together at some point in his personal future. No wonder she's heartbroken. Like, so weird. Do you know what I mean?
There's also a funny moment where they're trying to get everything done because they set off the self-destruct.
Yeah.
That's why everything's so panicked.
Cal panics and basically the planet's going to blow. Yeah.
And River goes, oh, I really hate you sometimes.
He's like, I know.
He goes, I know. It's like, well, I mean, you don't know, but you know.
But the reason she sacrifices herself, because he tries to do it and then she bludgeons him. And he wakes up handcuffed to the pipe.
She punches him in the face.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing.
And the reason why she takes the hit and sacrifices herself instead of him potentially doing it. Because she's like, I'm not letting you do that. Don't you, like, dare take away all the times we had together. And he's like, time can be rewritten. She's like, don't you dare. Not one line. Which is a nice little callback to Heartland and the Aztecs.
Mm.
Like, time cannot be rewritten. Not one line. It's just like, yeah. She's making the point of if he dies sacrificing himself, everything that they ever had together vanishes. She's like, don't you freaking dare. And she's comfortable with taking the sacrifice because she said the last time I saw you, my doctor, that was, you turned up, you'd had a haircut, you're wearing a new suit, took me to the Singing Towers of Beryllium for a final night, and I just, like, you kept crying, and I knew something was wrong. And it's because, and she realises as she's making this play, it's because you knew that was the last time I was going to see you before this. And it's like, oh, that's so powerful. That is so brilliant. And then, of course, the little reveal, the reason why the Doctor would give her his screwdriver isn't because, like, just randomly he's like, there you go. It's a gift because inside it, unbeknownst to River, is a recorder of her thought pattern. Just separate from the one in her suit.
Yeah.
That he then... Because he doesn't get to say bye, like, he just uploads it to Cal in the nick of time. And there she is, alongside the crew that died in the story.
Mm-hmm.
They've all been backed up by Cal. So Cal gets to continue existing in her like sort of digital world. She's joined by the Daves, Anita, and River. Luke's got to protect his family's legacy and make sure that his auntie was okay.
Mm-hmm.
Donna's going to have to get over the trauma, but it'll take a little while. And the Doctor sort of leaves happy knowing that he at least managed to save her.
Yeah.
Like, at the very least. And it's sort of this wonderfully open feeling at the end of, so will we ever meet River?
Yeah.
The right way around. And I think had we never done, this would still be as effective.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think it is a little more effective because we do see more of that story play out.
Yeah.
I again, flashing forward, I love Matt Smith's reaction as the Doctor when we bump into her again the next time, because for him it is the second time he's met her, and he has that whole thing on his face of like, I knew this was coming, like, oh god, here we go. Do you know what I mean? He's sort of reacting to it as like, right, okay, sure, hi, yep, no, we know each other, yeah, okay, and
does she know it? Or is this the first time?
Well, we'll get to that when we get to it because there's lots of different hints. The very first time Riversong meets the Doctor, canonically in her timeline, is in a crib in A Good Man Goes to War, but really it's the events of Let's Kill Hitler,
right?
With Mel's. And then Mel's regenerates into the incarnation that is River. Yeah. So, and that's the first time you see Alex Kingston playing that character in her personal timeline, where she like, you know, is like, oh, you know, I know you. You're the person I meant to assassinate. Do you know what I mean? So like, it's. This is also, again, flashing forward, because someone's going to mention it in the comments, this is also not the last time we meet River in her personal canon in the show.
Yeah, I remember you saying that.
There is one more story with River after this, from her perspective. Although it's sort of left a little bit open as to how it works, but it still fits. I think this is one of the strongest stories of the modern era.
Yeah, it is, definitely.
It's so good.
It is. It's scary. It's action-packed.
The score's really good.
Slightly romantical.
Very, in terms of Donna and Lee.
Yeah.
And then really cruel. Because I was just taken away.
At the end, I really did think that the Doctor and Donna were going to push that book off the edge.
I mean, it might help if no one else finds it, but sure. I guess no one's. I guess no one's going back to the library anytime soon, are they? That's the point. Like, as soon as they've gone, everyone will be off planet, and the Vashta Nerada will be back in like 12 hours, and be like, right, they left. Let's do our thing.
Get out.
I love it. I think it's really, really good.
It is.
How was it for you, considering you were rediscovering portions of it as you watched it?
It was amazing. So I was like, oh my god, this is all new. The only thing is, I am not the biggest fan of Riversong, because she's way overused.
So that's the thing. You became not a Riversong fan later.
Yeah.
When this was going out.
So my bias going in was like, oh, for God's sake. But then she's totally different, because it's the first time she's played her.
Mm-hmm.
And to be fair, this is the first time I've watched an episode with Riversong in for a long time.
Yeah, about 7 or 8 years.
Yeah. So
because you've not seen her last actual appearance in the show, have you?
No. I don't know, who's that with?
Capaldi.
Yeah, no, I've not seen it. So that died down quite quickly, thank God.
Yeah.
Not in my head going, oh God, shut up. Which I can imagine is going to happen when we get to Clara. But anyway.
The last thing with River, I don't think Kingston ever turns in a bad performance. I think she's always very, very good.
I completely...
It's the usage of the character or the overuse of the I'm the sexy adventurer tropes that kind of kills it going forward.
Annoying.
But that's less Kingston's fault, more Moffat's fault and the direction of it going forward, really.
I get that.
Because I feel you. Like, I don't dislike Riversong as a character, but I do I do hate that she sort of becomes a stereotype quite a bit going forward.
Yeah.
But I think this, her last story, and especially portions of Series 6, I think she turns in a phenomenal performance. And is a really fun addition to it as a character. Because it is just sort of like, oh my god, will they ever meet? Like, when will they meet? What's that going to be? Yeah. It's so good. It's such a good story.
It is a good story. And if you've not seen it, we highly recommend that you go and watch it because it's very, very, very good.
Yes! Now.
The end. Bye, folks.
The last episode we're talking about today is my favourite 10th Doctor story. And I always enjoy revisiting this one because it makes me feel really uncomfortable. Like, it's one of those examples of it's brilliant because it's hard to watch and is really freaky.
Brilliant, I hate it.
And that's what's great. So, tradition began in Series 1 of there being a lower budget episode for cost reasons so that more money could be funneled into the finale. And the way that sort of materialised is that in Series 1, Boomtown was written to replace something else, and it's a really relatively low-cost episode to put together, and is a great exercise in writing as a result. Series 2, we got Love and Monsters, a Doctor Light episode, so they're saving costs by sticking to a couple of physical locations and not having your lead actors in one story, meaning that David and Billy get a bit less money than they would if they were filming 13 solid episodes as the mains, but it also means that they get like a couple weeks off at one point in the middle of this very big filming block.
Tad harsh.
So it sort of pays off overall for that reason. That continued on into Series 3 with Blink, which again, worth it, because what an episode. This series, we get 2 episodes of this kind, which are known as Doctor Light episodes, albeit one of them this series is Companion Light. Midnight is the first one. Mm-hmm. This is genius because it is 3 sets total. A corridor, a swimming pool, and a cabin. You pop into the cockpit at one point, but it's the same set. The Doctor and Donna are taking a break. God knows they've earned one after the last few stories.
And it's crazy because you never see them do that.
Yeah, it doesn't really happen, does it?
They talk about things that they've done, like relaxing almost. But you never see it. So it's like, oh, that's very relaxing. They're on holiday. That's very nice for them.
Good for them.
But obviously this is Doctor Who, so it doesn't go like
on
that.
The diamond planet Midnight, description is the surface of which is bathed in lethal radiation from its star. So you get like the best sunlight through filtration.
Yeah.
As Donna words it, 15 feet of reinforced glass. And she's basically poolside, like a quiet adult sort of spa pool area. Whereas the Doctor's going on a tour of the waterfall made of sapphires. Which, for some reason, I had in my head is the Medusa Cascade, but I guess it's not.
No, he does mention the Medusa Cascade.
He mentions the Medusa Cascade, yeah. So, he's basically going... Donna's going to chill, and the Doctor's like, yeah, I can't do that. I'm going to go on this sort of like exhibition, where basically you go in this thing, it flies out to a certain point, then you get to observe the area briefly for a time. There's probably... I don't think they confirm, but there's probably like an observation deck or something that they're going to go to and have a look. And be there for a bit.
Or like a visitor centre kind of thing.
Yeah, and then travel back. The downside to it is it's a 4-hour journey each way. So, settling into this cockpit, the hostess, played by Ricky Ayola. Ricky Ayola's character is, again, great, and I didn't say her name because the character is purposely written without one, and it's a point made in the episode later. She whacks on every possible form of entertainment that they have, which I guess is the thing that they do on these flights. And the Doctor making eyes at Leslie Sharp's Sky Silvestri, another passenger. They're both like, oh, this is annoying. So he sonics it all off and they all have to talk to each other. What follows is several hours of him bonding with the other passengers. So you've got Leslie Sharp as Sky Silvestri, a lady who's recently parted with her wife, despite her not wanting to, and certain dialogue later sort of insinuates that perhaps
it was an abusive
relationship, yeah, or at the very least, one where like she is being legally pursued by her partner, despite her partner being the one who called it all off.
Yeah.
You have Professor Hobbs and his assistant Dee Blasco, played by David Troughton and Aisha Antoine, respectively. Nerds, calm down. Someone will point out that I've worked with Aisha. We worked on a Benny Summerfield box set Big Finish together down the bottom. There. Done it. You don't have to type it now. Save your fingers, unless you already typed it before you got to this bit.
Okay.
But so Professor Hobbs is there to be like the first person really to document midnight, because enough is known about it for like spars to be put on the edges of it, on the surface.
Yeah.
But no one's really documented its history, so he's attempting to do that. And this little exhibition here is like the first part of his current batch of research.
Yeah.
So it's not just a tourist thing for him. He's going out to study with Dee at his side. You have Lindsay Coulson, Daniel Ryan, and Colin Morgan as Val, Biff, and Jethro Kane, respectively, who are sort of your. Do you know what? I guess the best way to describe them is it's like a family from Corrie.
Yeah, like a proper British tourist family.
Yeah, like he's in his naff polo shirt, and she's leapt out of a soap opera.
Yeah,
she's leapt out of a soap opera.
Or Eccles.
Yeah, well, it's true. And their son Jethro, played by Colin Morgan, is your archetypal sort of angsty teen going through. It's not a phase, Mom. Like goth. Phase.
I'm a wizard.
Well, that's the thing, yeah. Because at the time Merlin was on TV, so that was kind of distracting. But yeah, because he is super young here. How old is he now? He's 35 now, so he would have been like 22 or 3 at the time. He's sort of playing like 17, 18. It's believable.
Well, is it? It definitely looks older than that.
It's because he has an older face. We also very briefly meet Driver Joe, played by Tony Bluto, and Mechanic Claude, played by Dwayne Henry, who are only in it very briefly, but they shine. They're great. Such a great, wonderful, believable pair. Everybody's getting on. Everyone's having a laugh. And then the Doctor goes in the cockpit because they had to take an alternate route. There's been some kind of there's been something that's meant that they had to take a slightly off detoured route that the computers calculated to get there. But they're not off the beaten track too much. But while they're pausing, because something's gone a bit wibbly in that area, isn't it? Something has gone a bit wrong. So they're sending an evac team to come out and get them and take them back. So they're not going to do the full thing. But they don't want to alert the passengers just yet. Doctor goes through the cockpit, though, and talks to the mechanic and the pilot. And while they're there, they're like, right, the radiation's strong enough to kill us, but there's at least 2 minutes of time, like a 2-minute window where we could look through the glass before any effects happen.
Yeah.
So no one's travelled here before in this spot. Shall we take a peek? And I love that moment because that's sort of like the last happy moment of the story. Everything before this has been really charming. The Doctor bonding with everybody, the hostess being a bit picky and arsey about it all, but just letting it happen. And it's really jolly and really fun. And then this happens, and it's really sweet because it's like, oh my god, like the Doctor, the pilot, and the mechanic are the first people ever to see this part of Midnight.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that incredible? And then Mechanic Claude is like, did you see that? It was a shadow. And I'm sure I read somewhere that they were in production going to put something in the frame for the an eagle-eyed viewer to spot, but they chose not to.
Oh, because I was looking out for it.
Because what's the rest of the story about? A threat you can't see.
Yeah.
And that it works so much better because as the shutter's coming down, it's like, no, there it was again, there. They go in. That's where we start getting.
I can feel myself lowering.
Yeah, as the shutter's going down.
Where? So doesn't matter how far I move, it's not going to change.
So we start getting knocks on the outside of the ship, and next thing you know, the cockpit is ripped away. As the hostess opens the cockpit and it's just blinding light of the outside world. That's where we set up the idea that there's a 6-second window of the pressure around the door before anything gets sucked out or goes in. So there is something outside, Biff knocks on the door, like a knock, and the outside banging responds.
Yeah.
So there is something on the exterior of the ship.
There's something in the way.
And Sky's really freaking out. Like, her paranoia and her terror is growing so much. She goes to the edge of the wall, she's proper screaming, and then that side of the ship gets attacked. Everything goes kablooey. By the time the lights come up, everyone's okay. The banging's stopped. There's no hull damage. There's like a big dent where something's obviously slammed into it.
Yeah.
But there's no tearing of the hull. And Sky is hunched double in the corner. And what follows is the cheapest, and I mean this as a compliment because I'm talking about like the cost, the cheapest way to create a terrifying situation I think I've ever seen in this show. And I'm including the classic series in this when they didn't have budgets. This is the cheapest way to create a horrifying experience. Because at first, she's copying everything that everyone says.
Yeah.
Kind of sluggishly at first, and then with like laser focus. And Leslie Sharp's the hero of this story in terms of the production. Like, her performance is the reason this works. She's terrifying.
What else has she been in?
Oh, shitloads. We primarily know her from other Russell stuff like The Second Coming.
Oh yeah, you said that was it. Sorry.
Yeah. And Rita Sue and Bob 2, Vera Drake, From Hell. Which you've definitely seen. I think you brought that into the collection, didn't you?
No, it was yours though.
I didn't have From Hell. No, you got it because Johnny Depp's in it.
Oh, I'm thinking of Drag Me to Hell. Sorry.
No, From Hell. From Hell.
Is she what's its wife?
She's
Who goes
in
mad?
I can't remember. I've not seen that one. I've not seen it. That's why I'm asking you. Yeah, Second Coming. Bob and Rose. Russell T Davies one with her and Alan Davies as the main characters. She's been in Poirot's. She's Who Do You Think You Are? She popped up in that. Film-wise, Naked, Full Monty, Inkheart.
Wow, she is in a lot.
Massive theatre career. She's been in so bloody much, and she is one of those like Russell's back pocket, like,
yeah, one of his
I've
faves.
absolutely got to get you in this at some point. So you can see why she was cast for this, because the technical skill on show is phenomenal. The fact that she has to mimic and then match and then convincingly, unnaturally preempt her co-star is incredible.
That must have taken so much practice.
But the amount of acting she's doing with just her eyes is insane. Like, she is boring into everyone's soul. Whenever they talk, she makes eye contact with them. Do you notice that? Whenever anyone's talking, she makes eye contact with them. So she has to kind of preempt it, but only look at them after they start talking.
You can see that she... you can see on her face that she's learning.
Yeah.
That she's watching them with every intent of grasping what they're saying. Her performance is just incredible.
This is
I was going to say Stella, is that the right word?
Yeah, sure. This is a story that there's a couple bits where it gives away what it's an allegory for, but it's an allegory for paranoia, xenophobia, racism. Like, it's an allegory for turning someone else into a monster to make things easier for yourself. Because, of course, immediately everyone doesn't trust everyone else.
Yeah.
And it turns into, there's a thing inside her, we've got to kill her.
Throw her out.
And the doctor's like, no. It's like, right, for starters, 2 people have already died. Don't make it a third. And secondly, that might be a brand new life form that is meeting another species for the very first time. Is that really the message you want to send? You're going to try and kill it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we'll wait for the rescue. Because his plan basically is, back away, wait for the rescue ship to get us in an hour. We'll get back, and then
I'm sorry.
God.
I'm so sorry.
We'll get back, and then I will deal with it. I'll look into it. I will quarantine her. I'll do whatever I need to do. But of course, then the paranoia begins about him, because it's like...
Well, you were talking to her, and you were...
You were talking to her first.
You
You were the last
know
person
her.
talking to her. And...
You two know each other.
So what is your real name, then? It's the Doctor. No, but what is your name? John Smith. And you finally meet a group of people who are like, oh, come on, no, not happening. Like, what is going on? And then, of course, she starts to only match his speech, which just makes them think they're more in cahoots. And even Jethro and Dee Dee, who've been with him the whole time, they've been on his side, they start to change. And it's just, it's an exercise in paranoia and escalation. And the fact that you should ultimately, listen to experts and lead with compassion.
Yeah. Because
they don't. This whole cabin stopped doing that. And it becomes about self-preservation. And like I said, the allegory cracks a couple of times because there's bits where it's like, where are you even from? Like, is he one of them immigrants and stuff like that? So you set up this whole thing of like, does he have his papers? And you're like, oh God, yeah, we see versions of this in real life.
Yeah, it's definitely not even a metaphor. It's an obvious portrayal of
xenophobia. It's xenophobia, paranoia, race. And yeah.
We're all bad people, is what I'm trying
essentially.
to say.
Highlights. Everyone is brilliant in this.
Really
every single cast member in this. That's why I wanted to go through all the names before, because every single cast member is phenomenal in this. They all do a wonderful job, and it doesn't work unless they're all in.
Yeah.
Special shout out to Leslie Sharp as Skye, because holy crap.
Yeah. What
a performance. And here's the thing. We still, by the end of it, we still don't know what the creature is. We don't really know.
No.
It was something physical outside, because it cast a shadow at the very least, and it knocked on the outside. But once it was inside Skye. Maybe it removed Skye and it took her over completely.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't seem like Skye ever comes back. Even though it tricks everyone into thinking that's what's happened, that Skye's free and now the Doctor's got this thing inside him.
I'm coming back to life. It's like, no, you're not there.
Because they nearly drag him out the ship and kill him. And it's only stopped because the hostess sort of puts two and two together and she kills... She kills Skye, or whatever's left of Skye.
Because she starts saying, like...
Molto bene,
Alonzi, yeah.
And she's like, it's stolen his words, which sort of is helped by Dee Dee at that point protesting, because she's like, no, that's not what happened. Like, look at what he said. She copied us, then she matched us, and then she got ahead. Like, he's not copying her. Like, she's ahead of him. It's got his voice. And then the fact that after the hostess sacrificed herself to save them all, and immediately the Doctor's like freed from whatever it's done to him. Like, while they're waiting there for 20 minutes and the recovery's nearly there, and that's when he finally speaks up and he's like, the hostess didn't even get a name. Like, no one knew her name. It's like, it's so horrible. Like, she sacrificed her life to save them, and no one even knows who she was at all. And the way as well that what's her name? The way that Val sort of tries to throw everyone else under the bus as well. She says, like, I said it wasn't you. It's like, bullshit. Like, moments ago you were with the rabble trying to pull him. Because, like, when they were trying to pull him out and kill him, the hostess wasn't, Jethro wasn't, he's, like, crying and holding back. And Dee Dee's protesting. So you really get this horrible... But, like, other characters, like, warm characters like Professor Hobbs and that, they're absolutely going for it. And he's so nasty to Dee Dee when she starts making sense, but they're all just so panicked. Love a little moment where Rose flashes up on the screen.
Lovely moment.
Well, do you know what I mean? Because it's by this point, it's happened enough in the series that when you box set in the series, you're like, oh, there it is. Like, you're looking out for these moments to happen now where Rose is on a broadcast of some kind. And this is the last, like, proper one. Because next episode is where it all comes to a head. But it's this is the first time that it's given a lot of focus, right to the point where, like, the foreground of the Doctor is in soft focus as the shot closes out, saying to the viewer, look. So if you'd missed any of the previous ones, you did not miss this one.
Yeah. I mean, knowing me, I probably would have.
David Troughton as Professor Hobbs.
Hooray!
Extra dimension to that this time because, like, you watched the story a bunch when you were younger, right? But
I wouldn't say a bunch.
well, no, but like you'd seen it a few times.
Yeah.
You never would have made that connection.
Because funnily enough, it was one of my boyfriend's favourite episodes. So I used to go around and we used to watch it because I just wanted to impress him.
Oh, so you don't actually like it?
I hate Doctor Who.
Bit late for that.
What?
Bit late for that, isn't it? Bit late to derail now. But
he was the boyfriend, by the way.
Yeah, it was me. Hi, everybody. Hi. Wave to the people. Lovely. But like, you wouldn't have got that extra kind of little lovely bump of. I mean, Michael Troughton's obviously a great actor. David Troughton, sorry, Michael's his brother. He's an actor too. But David Troughton's obviously a great actor in his own right. But like, now that you have a new favourite Doctor, because David was your favourite Doctor,
yeah,
and then we began this experiment.
Yeah.
And who's your favourite Doctor still as of now?
Paddy Troughton.
Exactly. So how nice was it this time? How nice was it this time around with David Troughton in it?
As soon as because you
just
reminded
before we put it on,
me,
I said, like, by the way,
yeah.
Patrick Troughton's son David is in this.
And then as soon as I saw it, I was like, holy moly!
Yeah.
He's got his eyes.
Yeah.
His
He's got
emotional and his brow.
He's got the tone of voice as well.
There's moments where he's talking, and I think it's shots of Sky or it's shots of the Doctor, and it's like that could be Patrick Troughton.
Yeah. It's mad, isn't it?
It was mad. And I loved it, because I love Paddy Troughton so much. So technically, I had my two favourite Doctors in the same episode in my brain.
What are you talking about? Chris Eccleston wasn't in this one. So, sorry, I thought you said the best Doctor. Anyway. But speaking of the Doctor, the other massive kudos for this one has to go to David. What an incredible performance. Like, him and Leslie Sharp absolutely matched perfectly, but that last 10 minutes is terrifying.
Yeah.
Because in the last 15, you watch the Doctor, who is usually on top of everyone's shit, lose control of the situation.
Yeah. Which is real rare.
Especially when it's like him on his own. Like, against villains, sure. Yes, that happens sometimes. Like, but he's with his friends.
He's
like,
with
they're
people
working
that he's
together,
trying to protect,
yeah. And then that's it. Like, it hinges on people just stopping and listening to him. But this Doctor is a little bit arrogant, and he is a bit too cocky. And you get that moment where it's like, you know, oh, you're such a big deal, are you? And he's like, yeah, don't want to brag, but yes. And he makes that point of being like, I am more important. As far as like a threat level is concerned, I am more important. Instead of spelling it out and being like, look, I come from somewhere that's very special, I've got all this knowledge, if it focuses on me, then you're all in more danger than you would be. Yeah? But instead he's like, no, I'm clever. And everyone's like, oh, so you're cleverer than us. It's like, yeah, I am. And it's the wrong crowd to talk to this. So talk
Their
to them
reactions.
This way. They are panicking and they are scared, and suddenly this arsehole's like, I'm cleverer than you. Of course they're going to be like,
oh, well, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
You're a bastard.
Yeah. So...
I mean, Dee Dee, she's like, and then just like folds her arms. It's like, oh, you're in trouble now.
But then he's flat out in trouble when it overtakes him, and you sort of watch. You have that moment where it speaks just before him, and then David's expression locks.
Yeah,
and it doesn't change, and he looks like we noticed as well. There's the long shot where he's just staring at the wall before they start to move him. He's got like moisture around his eyes, where his eyes are obviously clouding because he's not blinking. He's got like drool on his chin,
and he looks
because
like
aside from when he's talking,
so
his mouth is just open the whole time. Yeah, and it looks like he's trying so hard to do anything. Like you see like his neck twitching, and like you see the veins in his forehead.
His
like
eyes, he looks like he's gonna cry.
Yeah, he doesn't look away. He doesn't look at anything. In fact, the only time he manages that very briefly is when he's at the door. He manages to look at the air hostess. Really brief. He manages to break his gaze and look at her before she makes the call. But apart from that, he's always looking forward. Like you said, it looks like he's pleading.
Yeah.
He's like just hoping someone will notice, and Dee Dee kind of does, and Jethro hasn't noticed, but he's not getting involved in the violence because he can see that this is wrong. It's really upsetting.
They're all like screaming, like, throw him out, throw him out.
Kill the witch!
And she's,
kill the beast!
And the entity that's talking through Sky, she's like, this is what he does. He makes you fight. He makes you fight against each other.
And it's just describing its own plan, basically. It's like it's used their paranoia to get here, and it's going, yeah, he did this. Isn't this bad? You have to kill him. Come on, kill him.
You're doing a great job.
Well done. Great news. It's so disturbing, and it's one of the tensest stories in the show's run.
Yeah.
And the little button where he gets to get back and basically gives Donna a massive bloody hug, and it's like, yes, you need this. An insinuation that they're going to essentially suggest to the relevant authority what happened based on the witness accounts. So the Ledger facility is likely going to get closed down and the planet left. But I love the fact that we never see it. They never do. There's not like a shot of it like leaping out of Sky as they're pulled out of the door or something. So we get like an effect shot. It's like, no. It's scarier because we don't know exactly what it did or exactly what it can do. Whether it was malicious in its intent or it was just trying to survive because it thought something had like arrived in its territory. Like, we don't know. And that's more frightening.
Yeah.
I love Midnight. It is one of my favourite episodes of Doctor Who, and it's absolutely my favourite 10th Doctor story. And it's because of the performances and the concentration of the script and the direction and everything using that small budget as its motivation. Like, if they were given all the money in the world, we don't get this episode.
Yeah.
Like, the show, as of now, as of this recording, the show's got a fairly massive budget. It's still nowhere near as much as you'd imagine. Like, the BBC are very stingy.
Yeah.
But the show has a fair amount of budget, and you can sort of see it in terms of the location filming, the fact they film abroad a bit more for exterior shots and stuff. Like, you can see it on screen. And I wonder if the current era could produce something as really solid as this if it was given that limitation for at least an episode.
Because they use everything they can.
Which is not very much.
Which is not much to make... And it just makes it so much more effective. If you can't make it physically there, you've got to make people imagine that it's there, and that is. I mean, the last time they did this, half of the antagonists were 3-4 statues that they'd made out of like polystyrene and paint. Yeah, and it's terrifying. It's much more and a couple of ballet dancers with costumes to look like them for certain poses. Because it makes you imagine. And the thing that you come up with in your own head is scarier. Always going to be scarier than anything anybody else does. Yeah. Which is why I love when like theatre do performances with really minimal sets and minimal props. Yeah, because it means your imagination can just run wild. I mean, look at this show. Like, in the classic era, we never really see a Dalek properly. We see bits of one or bits of mutate. We see a claw or a hand or what looks like kidneys, like attacking Tom Baker. And we see like a person half mutated into one, like where it's a human. But we never really see a Dalek in the classic series. And they play it up as how frightening that can be. Like, I remember the very first time we see one is after they've hijacked the armour, the casing. Yeah, the Daleks, chuck it up. And they get it out, and then under like the Doctor's cloak, the camera just goes over to it for a moment after they've left, and you see this like crustacean like limb start to reach out under the coat, and then we move away. And you're like, what the hell is it? Like, it's because they build it up as well. Like, it's Barbara. Barbara comes to have a look, and he's like, no, don't. And him and the Doctor like get it, and like Susan and Barbara don't see it. And they really build up the fear. Obviously, in the new series, it's like they want to go more all out, so they create a really cool design for the creature, and it's still really like, oh my god, what the hell? And each one's a bit different. Like, some you can see sort of closed eyelids somewhere in the melted flesh in the middle, and it's like, was that a face? Like, what? Do you know what I mean? No, I didn't notice that.
Yeah, it's not on all of them though. It's on some of them. They all look a bit different. Like Dalek Sex one is just a pure like, alien lime green dude with one eye and everything, and each one looks different.
Some of them have got, the thumbs up.
Some of them are dabbing. But it's the fear of the unknown, and I think Midnight is the greatest example of that in the show.
Yeah,
and it's one of the best Doctor Who stories. It just is. It just really is. Am I being hyperbolic as far as you're concerned? I mean, no, I'm correct. But let me know down below in the comments, what do you think of Silence of the Library, Forest of the Dead and Midnight?
Midnight.
And are you excited for next episode where we're talking about sort of one of the most enjoyed finales of the modern run, but also before that, another episode people regard as one of the best episodes of the show's run. We get our first What If episode, basically, next week.
See, I don't remember this.
You don't remember Turn Left?
I remember the bug.
What do you mean?
On the back.
There's nothing on the back. What are you talking about?
Well, I don't know. Bye.
Next time! Ta-ra!
Bye.